Hey guys, welcome back to another Helix video. Exciting news in Helix land. The new firmware has been put out into the wild, firmware version 2.20. Really cool, and especially if you're a bass player. They really they really showed the bass players some love on this one. I had done a video, and I'll put the link to that video in the description of this one. They announced this update back in January, and so I did a video kind of talking through all the stuff they were going to add. So I'm not going to rehash that again. You can just check that video out. And I'll have a link to also the release notes. If you want to just go read on Line 6's website what all is in this update, you can do that as well. So I won't bore you with all that. But what I wanted to do is this patch, and then I've got a couple other patches I want to try to do in highlighting or utilizing things in the new update that maybe you couldn't do before with Helix. So this one, the aptly titled drone patch, is exactly that. As you heard in the intro to the video, there was a droning sound going on in the back. I used snapshots to just as an example to show what this can do, where you can change the pitch of the notes that are being droned. So that is assigned to the snapshots. So this is a kind of patch that's a lot of fun for practice, just for noodling around and practicing lead over different chords or pitches. You could also use it if you're like a solo performer to have kind of a bed of sound to play over the foundation there. Or you could figure out ways to use it in a band. But anyway, again, this patch is utilizing some new stuff in the firmware to do something that, without getting kind of creative with the looper before, you really couldn't do this exact thing with previous firmware. So let me kind of really quickly just explain how I put this patch together, and the link to download this patch will be in the description. So really the centerpiece of this patch is the new 3-note generator, which is brand new to this firmware. It does exactly what it says in the name. It generates 3 notes. You can select what the 3 notes are, SC 1, 2, and 3. So you can select, what the pitch of those are going to be, the individual levels and pans and all that sort of stuff. And I have, I have these set where you see in brackets. That means that those parameters have been assigned to snapshots. So just for the sake of putting this patch together, I just did E, A, and D, just 3 pretty common keys or chords, if you will. I just have basically a 1-5-1. The first note A of the scale, the 5th note E, and then the first note again A. So it's basically like a power chord, I guess you could say. I'm also to kind of give some life to this tone that's being generated. I'm using the Plastic Horse, which is new to this firmware. I'm using the Vintage Swell, which is also new to this firmware, and the Adriatic Swell, which is new to this firmware. Now, the Swell feature on these, in this particular application, really the Swell is not being featured or needed, but in the interest of wanting to use some of the new stuff, I started with these and just kind of liked them and left them there. What I like about this Vintage Swell is the ability to drop the bit rate, I say that backwards, bit depth and sample rate down quite a bit, and I'll show you how that sounds in 1 second. But that adds a whole different vibe to it. And I've got a particle verb set to hazard, so it's sound like it's about to blow up. And then an octaverb, which is reverb, and it adds an octave above, hence the name. So then just a noise gate at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all the effects and let you hear just what the 3-note generator sounds like. Oh, one other thing. I do have a volume pedal here that I'm using to fade in and out the tone generator. And the important thing is to put it before the delays and reverbs. So when you fade it out, the reverbs and delays will finish, and you're not going to cut those off. So anyway, I am using the sine wave. You can set it to saw wave or triangle, or there's several options. Sine wave is just a nice smooth wave. I didn't want anything too roughed up. I just wanted a really basic pitch to start with. So I'm going to fade that in. So, it's basically just generating a tone. And, but on its own, it's not particularly exciting, just basic tone. But I'm going to start putting effects on and let you hear, like, step by step what these are doing and how it kind of adds, makes it a little more interesting of a sound and something a little more usable. So we'll start with the chorus. So that's basically just giving it some modulation, some movement, and we'll kick on this vintage swell. And you can hear that the bit depth and sample rate, like if I turn that up, it just sounds normal. But when you crank them down, it really gets that lo-fi tone, which I think is pretty cool in this particular setup. And then there's the other delay, just giving a little more air to it. The particle verb. And then finally the octaverb. So, by the time, well, let me let that die out. So by the time, you put all these effects on there, you end up with a pretty cool atmospheric pad sound. And like I said, I think there's a lot of applications for having some fun with that. The top path here is pretty straightforward. I threw a few of the new things in, the multi-band or 3-band compressor. For anyone not familiar with what that does, basically it allows you to compress different sections of the frequency band separately. So you can compress your lows or your mids or your highs in different varying degrees. You can select what frequency the low and high and mid are and all that sort of stuff. You can just play around with that. I've used them some in the studio, but I'm not an expert on the best way to set up multi-band compressors. So I don't have any really good tidbits for that, but it's a good compressor. It does sound nice. From there, I've just got a Timmy just to give a little bit of drive using the Litigator amp model. Love this amp model. If this was the only amp model Helix came with, I'd still buy another one tomorrow. I am using the two new matchless cabs with a 121 mic model on both of those. I think these really sound nice. I've just started playing around with this firmware today, but really enjoying those cabs. Got a memory man, and then a spring reverb, and then the signal splits. I've got an octaverb down here just to give it that kind of airy, high octave sound, and then a noise gate. So top path is very straightforward. It goes straight out. The bottom path has no input. The 3-note generator is doing all the noise making. So that's a pretty cool effect. So anyway, like I said, the link to download this patch will be in the description. Mess around with it. I think it's a fun patch. I think you can get a lot of mileage out of it in different applications in different ways. So let me know what you guys think, and if you have any requests for ways to feature things you want to see about the new firmware, let me know. I'll be happy to try to accommodate that. Like I said, I'm going to try to build a few patches just based around the new stuff rather than just pulling up a blank patch and pulling up each effect individually and going, okay, here's what this sounds like, and here's what that. I mean, if you have a Helix, you can do that yourself in 5 minutes. So I wanted to try to come up with maybe some creative ways to use the new stuff and share that with you guys. So anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know if you like it. As always, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And until next time, thanks.